afternoon. Before we get started, please note that this program is being live streamed and will be recorded and available for later viewing. The LSC Cyfair Library YouTube page and our CATS Library Guide webpage. Please note that the audio and camera of all Zoom attendees will stay muted during the presentation. Please type your questions and comments in the Q&A or chat box. We will open the floor to questions and comments for the last 30 to 20 minutes of the program. Some of you may be familiar with some of the programs that we've hosted in the past called the Village Square. This particular event is going to be modeled after those events. So the Village Square events, basically the goal is to model and engage in civil discourse around controversial topics. So the expectation for today's event is that we will hear from our experts on this topic, then we'll open the floor up to engage in conversations and hear different viewpoints on this topic. So welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon for Cats in the Law. The panel is one of several cat-themed events hosted by the LSC Cyfair Library for Adopt a Cat Month. My name is Miranda Ashworth and the Government Department Chair at Lone Star College Cyfair. If you're not registered to vote, please stop by the League of Women Voters Cyfair table outside the recital hall. I would also like to mention that our friends of the library used bookstore located in the front lobby of the LSC Cyfair Library is having a buy one get one free sale today through Saturday, June 24th, and all proceeds help support our library events and programs and our student research awards. So I'll move on to introducing our panelists. We're thrilled to have with us today Fran Ortiz, Professor of Law from South Texas College of Law, Houston. Mira Nadal, local animal welfare journalist and member of the board of directors of the Texas Humane Legislative Network, and the LSC Cyfair librarian and animal advocate Regina Vitolo. All three of our panelists will be sharing their knowledge and expertise on cats and the law with us today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our panelists.
Oh, you want me to say something? Okay. My name is Fran Ortiz. I'm a professor at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I've been teaching there. I think I'll be starting my 28th year. And I've been teaching animal law for about almost 20 years. I teach a lot of other courses as well. I teach natural resources and property and that kind of stuff. But animal law really is my favorite thing to teach.
Hi everyone, I'm Mira Nadal and I'm an animal welfare journalist and also on the board of directors for the Texas Humane Legislation Network. And so I've worked in regular radio and TV most of my life, but my love has always been animals. So I have been working on my own project, Mira's Animal Tribe, where I only do animal welfare stories. And of course, I'm really excited to be here and so happy about the topic that we're discussing today.
My name is Regina Vitolo, and I'm a librarian here at Lone Star College Cyfair Library. I'm also a certified TNR practitioner and a lifelong animal advocate, so I'm here to contribute my experience and expertise to this panel. Before we dive into the main portion of our discussion, I just wanted to briefly go over some terminology. I think a lot of people who are tuning in today may already be familiar with these acronyms and terms, but for those who have no idea what TNR is, we're going to go ahead and define these terms. So TNR stands for trap, neuter, or spay and return. And a variation of that is TNVR, which stands for trap, neuter, vaccinate, and return. And feral cats are unsocialized outdoor cats, and they typically do not have any contact with humans, and they hide from humans. So they may have human caretakers and feeders, but they typically do not let those humans see them. And then stray cats are previously owned or abandoned cats that were at one time indoor pets, and they're just familiar and friendly with humans, but they no longer have regular human contact or live in a home. And then community cats is an umbrella term that refers to outdoor neighborhood cats that depend on community feeders for all their care. Any questions so far? So now on to the GRIM statistics, the GRIM data here. So the American Society of the Prevention of the Cruelty to Animals, also known as the ASPCA, states that the United States has an estimated 70 million plus feral and stray cat population. It's impossible to arrive at an exact number because many of these cats, of course, like we just mentioned, hide from humans. And also it's, if you think about it, it's just almost an impossible task to pin down how many abandoned cats or feral cats and animals are out there. Next slide. So looking at cats in Houston, feral cats, which we already defined as wild or free roaming cats, are the largest cause of pet overpopulation in Houston. So there are thousands of feral cats born each day, and they're born into homelessness every year, and often it's right under our noses in our own neighborhoods, in our own bushes or garages. And if they're left unattended, feral cat colonies can grow out of control at a rate that most people have no idea about. So when cat colonies are left unattended, and they're fed by well-meaning citizens, but they're not fixed, these colonies grow at a fast rate, especially here in the South and in Houston, where kitten season tends to be year-round because of our climate. So that's something important to remember when you see just a few cats and you think, I can handle feeding 5 cats. If those cats aren't fixed, pretty soon it's going to be 50 cats. So that's something to keep in mind. And then this graphic just shows the exponential rate at which the cat population grows every year. It's according to the North Shore Animal League of America, it estimates that over 70,000 puppies and kittens are born in the US every day, leading to more than 3.7 million animals being euthanized each year in shelters across the country. And again, female cats, they can get pregnant as young as 4 months old, and they can have multiple litters of kittens a year. So the gestation period for female cats is just over 2 months long, and they can even get pregnant again almost immediately after delivering a litter of kittens. According to the data collected by the Best Friends Animal Society, which is a homeless animal advocacy group, the total number of cats and dogs euthanized in shelters decreased in 2018 and then increased rapidly again in 2021. And this chart shows the areas in Texas that qualify as no-kill shelters in dark green, and then in yellow you can see all of the kill shelters. So, I mean, it's, as you can see, the no-kill status shelters are much less common. And that's not just in Texas or in Houston, that's all across the United States. And there are 2 major types of shelters, and there's the traditional shelter and then the no-kill shelter. So traditional shelters euthanize animals depending on circumstances, how much space they have, how many volunteers and workers they have that are able to care for them. And then no-kill shelters attempt to keep all animals alive. No-kill shelters depend heavily on volunteers, right? And on fosters to help make room in the shelters for other animals. So that's something to remember. If you are looking for something to volunteer, if you want to volunteer, donate some of your time, look into your local no-kill shelters. They'll really help them out. Okay, so in Houston, in the greater Houston area, we have 2 no-kill shelters, which is insufficient for our pet overpopulation problem. And no-kill shelters are underfunded, rely heavily, like I said, on fosters, volunteers, and grant funding. So there's a lot of work that keeps it, to keep it running as a no-kill shelter. And the state of shelter overpopulation and the broader stray and abandoned pet problem in Houston has led to widespread burnout for those who work or volunteer in shelters and in animal rescue in general. Something we tend to say, those of us who work in TNR, is that people are breeding the animals faster than we can keep up with them. And so that's why when we talk about TNR, we also advocate for spay and neuter your pets. Even if you think they will be only indoor cats, an indoor cat has a biological drive that will make sure it gets outside at some point to reproduce. So keep that in mind. Okay. on. Okay, so in December of last year, some of you may be familiar with this news story if you're an animal lover and you follow all of the different animal news threads. A news story about two cat ladies in Alabama made headlines and circulated widely in animal rescue groups and online. Mary Alston, 60 years old, and Beverly Roberts, 84 years old, were arrested and taken to jail by police in Wetumpka, Alabama, over this past summer. The police chief said the women had previously been warned to not feed stray animals. And they do have, their county had an ordinance about not feeding stray animals and having animals congregate. So the women were scheduled to stand trial in Alabama City Court, where they were accused of committing 4 misdemeanors in their efforts to feed and trap stray cats. But of course, because of public outrage, because really they were doing a service to the community, the charges were eventually dropped. So at least that's a win. But you can imagine the conversations that started in the cat rescue community and people who practice TNR in their neighborhoods. People were scared. I was nervous that Texas was going to see an ordinance come out of this, people who were against having cats trapped and neutered and then returned to their homes, their communities, the neighborhoods where the cats lived. And so this is just another headline. 2 retirees were told to stop feeding stray cats. An Alabama judge found them guilty on 4 charges. That seems kind of harsh, right? Can you imagine calling the police on two ladies you see feeding or cats in the park? I don't know, that seems harsh to me, but that seems to be what a lot of people, that's their default reaction. They see a bunch of cats congregating, or they see that they're being cared for and they think, I don't like cats. This is an issue. I'm going to report to animal control or report to the authorities and see if I can stop this. Well, really, if that happened, and if these women have to stop caring for this cat colony and practicing TNR, what's going to be the outcome of that? We're going to see way more cats in the park in these neighborhoods, and these people will be even more upset, right? It'll become even more of a nuisance to them. Okay, so now zooming out, going abroad, looking at cats in the news, first here in Spain, and of course we prefer the term cool cat ladies rather than crazy cat ladies, but I mean, either works. I don't consider that a pejorative term for us, but Madrid's crazy cat ladies aren't crazy, which is states, and they have a license. So this case was interesting to read about. Because, okay, according to the article, there are 1,017 documented or registered feral cat colonies in Madrid. More than 750 people have a special license from City Hall that allows them to feed and manage the colonies correctly. So they're registered and documented, and what these ladies, their statement that they gave to the newspaper journalist was that what we're doing is good for the community. It's not just out of love for the animals. And we find that to be true as well, that we are also doing a community service by providing TNR services. So in 2016, the mayor of Madrid approved a feral cat colony management program, where previously, 2 years prior to that, in 2014, it was illegal to care for cat colonies. So it went from people were being penalized for doing it to they got full support from the mayor, and so they just had to register their cat colonies, and then they were free to care for those cat colonies. Not too far away from Spain, in Italy, many cities, most notably Rome, are known for their cat colonies, and often these colonies are cared for by nuns and volunteers. The Italian Cultural Foundation's website notes that Italians love cats so much, there are laws to protect feral cat colonies. Cats can freely roam wherever they want, even in famous historic landmarks, and anyone who harms a cat in Italy can be charged with a crime. Cats can also live wherever they like, and they must be fed. They cannot be relocated either, which is an important aspect of TNR. So they have to be returned to where they were trapped for TNR. Local Italian authorities are responsible for neutering local street cat colonies. So that's interesting. We see in Italy, it is up to the local authorities to provide that TNR service. There are many other countries abroad that have adapted the same humane approach to caring for free roaming cats. Generally, it seems that most Texans are for humane resolutions or humane solutions to the pet overpopulation problem like TNR. But those of us who do trap, neuter, return, we do run into people, often neighbors, who loathe this idea, the idea of the cats being fixed and then returned to the neighborhood or the community where they were originally trapped. And moving on. All right, I'll hand it over to Mira.
So why are people so against TNR? There are many reasons. They claim it's abandonment, but we also know that's not true. They're a neighborhood nuisance. Some people just don't like cats, and they will just tell you that every time they see you. Concerns about the bird population, concerns they carry disease. Of course, there's the myths about all cats being evil, there's a superstition, and there's cultural issues as well. One of the things I want to throw in there as someone who works in media is that there are negative media portrayals all over in films, on TV, of cats in general. So sometimes when people see that, this is the same thing that happens, as an example, when there was an overpopulation of Chihuahuas in Los Angeles because they saw celebrities carrying them around, not knowing they had an entourage of 40 people helping that Chihuahua. So, and those shelters were flooded with Chihuahuas. So a lot of times people don't have the right information and just go by their own beliefs. The most humane way to address the stray and feral cat overpopulation crisis, it does stabilize the feral cat colonies, because I just finally stabilized mine. You know, they all get along now, and they kind of keep out the other two tomcats. They're trying to come in. They have their little territory. It does improve their lives after they are spayed and neutered. Of course, you can see it from night and day. They can be this wild, you know, just I'm gonna do whatever I want, to hey, thanks for letting me have some shelter today. And they completely different. Their hormones come down, and they're a whole new cat. Answers the needs of the community. It's definitely a win-win for both the people in your neighborhood and for the cats. You're not going to have the fighting that you hear with unaltered males fighting, going after each other. You're not going to have all these different, you know, so many litters of kittens. There's one cat that I finally just caught, you guys, after 6 litters, and fostering her 2 last of the Mohicans, as I call them, so that they can have a good life. And she was just really smart. She is really smart. She would avoid the trap. I have a picture of a possum in a trap and her sitting next to the trap and laughing at me. So they are very, very smart, and they understand. So I had to use my own, that's why I got TNR certified. It's because of this one cat, but I got her. And so, you know, it answers the needs of the community, because now she's happy. She's a happy cat now. You know, she's not having babies all the time. It does protect their lives. You know, they're going to be vaccinated after when they are TNR, they get a rabies vaccination. And of course, you know, they're not as wild. They're not wild cats anymore. They kind of sit and they're happy, and they're not causing trouble, or at least mine are not, you know, fighting or any of those things. The other methods just don't work. And some of those methods are, why don't we just gather them up and take them somewhere else and dump them? And that just doesn't work, because every time, this was actually used not too long ago. So people would just take their feral cats, they would take them to a shelter, and unfortunately, because they're not socialized, they weren't able to be adopted. And so those cats would be euthanized. The thing is, the other methods, the method of taking them and removing them doesn't work, because once the shelter and resources are still there, the animals are still going to come in. And that's not just with cats. That's the same as if you removed a raccoon and took it from your attic and put it in the woods, more raccoons come in. It's just biology, and the term is vacuum effect. And so it's, they've tried this on many, this has been going on for a long time. People think that if we just move the animals, they'll go away, but they never actually go away. But when you do TNR, you have stabilized a colony, and they actually keep the other cats out, right? They keep out, so, and I saw a showdown actually on my own cul-de-sac where one of them that was fixed, there was a tomcat who lives at my neighbor's house, was coming over and there was a big showdown and he left. And so they kind of keep them out of the area. So it does work, and it's very humane. It's more inhumane to take a group of cats and put them in a place that they're not acclimated to because it's not their home and they would not know where to find food, water, that sort of thing.
I did want to mention about protecting their lives.
Yeah.
Tomcats will travel up to 5 miles to find females that they can reproduce with. So, and unfortunately you see maybe a lot of neighborhood or community cats that end up getting hit by cars that way. And I know for some people that's like, you wouldn't even give it a second thought, but those of us who do care about cats or other living creatures, it's something we hate to see.
Yeah.
So getting them fixed does help protect their lives, and that it'll keep them safe and more homebound. For some people, that might not be a good thing, but the alternative is more cats coming around, and like Mira pointed out, if you remove those cats from their home territory, other cats will show up. And if they do show up, we hope that people will get them TNR'd, but there isn't really a way to just completely eradicate them.
And of course, trap, neuter, return is definitely a great solution, as we discussed. So a lot of times people, one of my cats, one of the feral cats that showed up, it was a kitten, and my friend adopted it because it was very friendly. She didn't understand what the notch on the ear was. And she was, oh, I wonder how he hurt his ear. I go, well, no, he didn't hurt his ear. Someone cared enough to help him, and they made sure that he was fixed. But it turned out he was very friendly. He wasn't an aggressive feral cat, and he was able, I was able to help him get adopted. But the ear tip is known as a symbol of a cat that's been spayed, neutered, and vaccinated. It's a standard part of most trap, neuter, return programs, and it's simply the best method because we know at a glance that a cat has gone through the program, and that's it's the best. So you'll always see this little notch on their ear, and they're fixed. And a lot of people who understand the program, when they see them and they come around, they understand that maybe I can help this cat and provide shelter or food.
And when they see that ear notch, they know somebody in the neighborhood is a great resource. I can reach out to them to help TNR the cats in my area. I do want to mention that some rescue groups and shelters do use a tattoo rather than an ear tip. So if a cat is trapped and taken for a TNR surgery, the vet will see that it's tattooed and know that they do not have to proceed with surgery. That cat's already been fixed. Another version of this ear tip, some shelters, and I think this is more common up north, do the V cut on the ears. And I think that's supposed to help distinguish between a cat who's just lived a rough life and has a tip on the ear because of several cat fights. But if you see a tipped ear, it's typically the left ear, and it's typically a clean cut. So it's I think relatively easy to distinguish between an ear that's been in a cat fight and then a tipped ear. Moving on. Okay, so for this one, we want a little audience participation online and in the room. Is it illegal to feed stray cats? And if you think the answer is yes, raise your hand or leave a comment.
We're talking in Houston, we're talking in Texas, we're talking in the United States.
Let's talk about locally
So,
in Harris County.
I don't know.
I'm saying,
You said
My guess
yes.
is no. It's
No.
not.
I guess,
I know the answer, but I would have guessed no.
Okay. Any guess?
No.
No? Okay. Any guess? No. Okay. So short answer is it depends. I think all kind of figured that out already. And Fran is going to talk a little more about that before we move on to the next statement.
Oh, I thought that was a part of the next.
Oh, the next slide. Okay.
Yeah, so apparently I do not TNR, so I thought you guys were gonna talk about these questions, but common arguments that neighbors make when they don't want TNR is, I'm going to shoot this cat. I've heard that before. I'm going to shoot this cat or poison this cat if it comes onto my property. I'm going to take these cats and dump them. You're not allowed to feed stray cats. You're not allowed to return them back here. You've been feeding these cats for so long that you're now their legal owner. And so you have to take responsibility for them. And those are actually all statements. You can't do a lot, or you can't do the first two things. Did you want to move on?
So, well, here, if we can take a step back, if you did want to elaborate on the short answer about it depends.
Okay, go forward to the slide that has the law.
Is it this one right here?
No.
Okay,
No. Forward. There we go.
there we go.
So the answer is it depends because it depends on location, right? And it depends on who's doing it. And so I looked up the Harris County Animal Regulations and the Houston Animal Control Ordinance only because those are the most relevant to us. But it's going to vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction and state to state kind of thing. With the Harris County Animal Regulations, it specifically contemplated that community cats people are encouraged to do these TNR programs, that they have these community cat colonies. And so with regard to that, it specifically says that someone who is a community cat caretaker is supposed to be providing food, shelter, medical care to a community cat. And so clearly, if you are doing TNR, you are allowed to feed the cats. With regards to somebody who doesn't, you can do it, right? It's just there may be some limitations, but you can do it. And then it's a question of just how bothered are other people, right? So.
Right, that's important to point out. And also those of us that do care for cat colonies, for community cats, within the cat community, cat caretaker community, we remind new colony managers, always clean up after yourself. Otherwise, you're going to invite neighbors and other people to complain about the work you're doing. So if you're going to feed a colony of 10, 30 cats, make sure that you're putting little piles of food out on the ground so that there's no trash left behind after they eat their food. If you are using any kind of receptacle, make sure you gather those after the cats are fed, because that issue occurs often. People, they're well-intentioned, but they go and they feed cats and they make the mistake of just putting out cans of cat food and plastic or non-biodegradable bowls of food, and they never go back and clean those up, and they just pile up, and then that attracts unwanted attention, and that's when people are likely to complain or try to report or look into, can they be doing this? And then they, there can be, I don't know, Fran, I guess there could be some other law about if you're leaving trash behind or.
Oh, yeah, so
they could be charged.
I mean, there are so many things. It's not just you're going to be attracting cats, you're going to be attracting other wild animals who are coming in, to find the food. So if you're not cleaning up, you're causing even a greater problem. But yeah, there's definitely other things that you would be, littering is a violation.
Right. Okay, so now let's go back to here. So what was the other our next statement here?
Oh, so people say, I'm going to shoot this cat, I'm going to poison this cat. I was actually doing a CLE presentation once, and somebody in the audience says, so you're just telling me that I can't shoot a cat in my backyard? We were like, no, what is wrong with you? You're a lawyer. So yeah, we were very surprised at that. But it's illegal to do that. So in Texas, we have two cruelty laws. We have a cruelty law for livestock animals and a cruelty law for non-livestock animals. And so the feral cats would fall into the non-livestock animals provision. And years ago, animal did not specifically include strays or feral cats or dogs, but those were actually put in there specifically in response to in response to an incident, probably an idiot, in response to an incident where it turns out, well, it's ambiguous whether the statute actually covers feral cats. Well, now it's clear, it was, the definition was amended, so it includes stray or feral cats or dogs. And then you have the cruelty statute itself is subsection B, a person commits an offense to the person intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly. So even if you're just shooting off your gun, it hits something and then hits the cat, and kills the cat or injures the cat, causes bodily injury, you violated it because now you're being reckless, right? So it's not just intentionally going out there. You have to be very careful what you're doing. So the three main provisions with regards to harm, torturing an animal or killing or causing serious bodily injury. And then without the owner's effective consent, killing, poisoning, causing serious bodily injury, and again, without the owner's effective consent, causing bodily injury to an animal. And so with regards to 2 and 3, it may be a question of whether feral cats fall under there because there's no owner. But then I have seen a city who has interpreted this as saying, well, if they have no owner, it just means that portion can't be met. There's no way for you to get an owner's effective consent, so it should still apply.
And I just want to say it's important for those of us who do work in cat rescue and TNR to be aware of the laws, to arm yourself with this knowledge, because I've encountered several people, neighbors that regularly threaten to just shoot the cats in the neighborhood. If you're going to return them, I'm going to shoot them. I'm going to poison them. And people, they threaten that all the time. So it's important to be aware of these laws and repercussions.
Well, and even something simpler than the cruelty laws, depending on your location, there are provisions saying, well, you can't shoot your gun within city limits. So, you know, that's something else that you can always point to, saying, you know, it's not just this, it's you're violating other laws as well. The next one was, I'm gonna take these cats and dump them. Just, you know, the idea that they're gonna collect them and take them somewhere, you know, out by the lake or whatever the case may be. But again, this is covered by the cruelty statute, which specifically says that you cannot abandon unreasonably an animal in the person's custody. So if you take up that cat, you now have custody, and custody, I'm going to show this on another slide, but custody relates to then passing or abandonment, then passing it to another person to take custody. So if you've scooped up these cats and take them somewhere else, now you've violated the provision. You're not allowed to feed stray cats? Well, yes, you can. And we just talked about that before. It is provided for under local regulations. And a new statute that just came out shows that Texas I would say Texas is approving TNR programs, which of course means feeding them. So, of course. You're not allowed to return these TNR cats back here. If you actually don't return the cats where you got them, then the caretaker is actually doing something wrong. So under the Harris County Animal Regulations, they define return as returning the cat to the location where it was trapped. TNR is defined as returning them to their original location. And section 15C just deals with the TNR program. And again, it refers to releasing the cat on site where it was trapped.
So to be clear, people who think I'm just gonna herd all these cats, put them in the back of my car and go leave them in fields or by lake, or unfortunately in a trash can like that other article we just saw on the other side, that is animal abandonment.
Absolutely.
Be charged for that.
Yes. Under Houston, the Barks TNR program, again, it's the same thing that Barks, the Houston ordinance is not written completely in a way that refers to TNR. The Harris County regulations, actually, it has TNR all over it. They've thought it well through how to match everything together. But the Houston regulations, even though they don't say anything, Houston BARC, the Bureau of Animal Regulation and Care, they do have a TNR program. And if you look at their webpage discussing it, it does talk about returning the animal to where the cat was trapped.
And one of the things I think I added here, that picture on there about reporting animal cruelty online. So if you do know or have a neighbor or see someone and they're like gathering cats, because this happens unfortunately a lot, and you notice the cats you don't see them for several days and they don't come back, that person probably went and dumped those cats somewhere. And so, of course, we do encourage you, if you see anything like that, you can report anonymously. If you go, I think, through the Houston Animal Task Force, it is not anonymous, but there are ways to report stuff like that anonymously.
There is often people, it's weird. Some people know about these provisions and some people don't. And under Harris County regulations and the Houston ordinance, if you're caring for a stray after a certain amount of time, they're going to consider you the owner, right? And this is for purposes of, well, you want to be able to point to somebody who has to provide the medical care, who's supposed to be feeding it, who's supposed to be sheltering the animal. And so if you've been doing it for a certain period of time. In Houston, it is 3 days, but actually in Harris County, in the unincorporated areas, it's actually 7 days you would become the owner, unless you're the community cat caretaker, and it specifically excludes you. Community cat caregivers are not the owner, custodian, harborer, possessor, controller, keeper of a community cat. So you would not be considered the owner for that, and nor should you be considered the owner for any damage that cat causes, if it were to cause any damages.
I do want to say that cats that I have TNR that ended up staying like in my yard or in my driveway that I considered my cats, just an extension of my indoor cats. I do want to be identified as the owner of those cats, so I've had them microchipped. So that's an option. If you're someone who is growing attached to one of your community cats and you think it's going to stick around and you, if it disappears and you want to be contacted, then that's the other option is you can get it microchipped. And the microchip law, that is something that's recently was put in place that as an owner of a pet in Harris County, you are legally required now to microchip.
In Houston, not Harrison.
In Houston, you're legally required to chip that pet. Yes, thank you, Houston. And so that's, some community cat caretakers may hear that and think, oh my gosh, there's no way that I could ever do that to the cats that I take care of as a community cat caretaker. Well, that law does not apply to them. So you do not have to get a whole cat colony microchipped.
It appears that it doesn't apply to them. As a lawyer, I'm not going to say it doesn't apply. It appears not to apply.
That's how we've interpreted the law as of now.
So the provision says any person has to, with a dog or cat or whatever, has to microchip. We have the language somewhere in there. But it doesn't have an exclusion for community cat takers. And it doesn't say owner, it says person, and that's the concern. And I think that's what raised the concern. Because if it said if an owner has, but I think it says something if a person has custody or is harboring or something like that. But if you look at BARC's explanation, they actually went through and they said, these are the reasons for our amendments. It says, well, this is supposed to help us get animals back to their owners more effectively. And so clearly it's meant for owners. They just didn't write it this way. I think Houston needs to get some lessons from Harris County.
That's an important distinction.
And Harris County itself does not have a microchip requirement.
Thank you for, yes, don't want to confuse you.
Yeah. Feeding stray cats, again, this is Houston ordinance. If you're caring for a cat or a dog for longer than 3 consecutive days, you would be considered the owner. And this is again for administrative purposes, right? But it does specifically exclude those who are part of a community cat program. And that makes sense because they've defined community cats as unowned. So you can't say someone's an owner on one hand and then say they're unowned cats on the other. So.
Okay, so now we're moving on to, I guess, answers, how to reply to these statements, not necessarily invoking the law or certain provisions or ordinances, but with providing humane solutions or suggestions. So, go to the next slide. Okay, I don't want those cats on my car. This is something you've heard, Mira, I think multiple times in your neighborhood.
I hear a lot of interesting reasons in my neighborhood, but this is definitely one of them. You ship their food source to a less central location, use cat deterring fragrances. Some of those are lemon peels or citrus or orange peels, which I have used under a chair on my back patio. You can install a motion activated sensor. You can utilize carpet runners or car covers, and the carpet runners are those, they have little spikes and you hold them up, but they're not, they're not gonna hurt them, they'll just stay away. Welcome to the hood, I love that, that's hilarious. But yeah, I hear this a lot there on my car.
So ideally making the car, or top of the car, less inviting.
Yes, less inviting. I don't want those cats pooping in my flower bed. Well, cats actually have a natural way of digging to use the restroom, so they may be going in your flower bed. What you can do is add river rocks to prevent them from digging in soft soil, sand, and mulch. Again, you could use a motion activated sprinkler. Those cat deterring fragrances will work. Again, lemon peels are great, doesn't cost you much. Orange peels. Chicken wire, just making sure you turn the sharp edges down, and you can put it in the soil and pack it into the soil. And you can also use an upside down carpet runner packed with soil. And then there's a scat mat. It's a non-chemical deterrent that you can get in any Tractor Supply store. You can also put that in your beds. And you can just provide another litter box. Just put it out there and let them have a place to go so they don't go into your flower bed.
And I think that seems to be an effective solution to that, because if you provide them with an alternative, it's more appealing, more inviting.
Yeah, I'm so special.
I want to go with box.
I would go to box and I live outside. And
I do want to mention though, for this Alley Cat Allies on their website, they have a full list and links to different things you can purchase that deal with this cats in the flower bed.
Oh, I don't want those cats harassing my dog and cat, and actual things said to me just a couple weeks ago. And so again, you can use cat deterrent fragrances, similar deterrents keep cats away from property and pets, the same things. There's also something I saw, it's not actually water, it's a deterrent, it's a siren, and they walk by and it's like, it makes a noise. But there's so many different things that doesn't harm the cat that you can use to deter them from that. So yeah, the cat is harassing the little dog in that picture.
And I do want to mention any kind of deterrent that you do use, of course, if it's linked to from one of these websites like Alley Cat Allies, just make sure it's non-toxic to the environment, to you, and to wildlife and the cats.
I don't like cats. A very big thing that I've heard, and I also believe my personal opinion on that is maybe people don't understand or have never had a cat, or they don't understand the differences between a stray cat, a community cat, an indoor owned cat, and the differences. So they may see these cats as a nuisance, right? But they don't understand the situation. So what you do is you explain the benefits of TNR as a win-win scenario, in which it is, because you're going to again stop the fighting. They're going to be calmer. They're going to keep the other cats out, and they're not causing any trouble. They're just living their life.
Oh, okay. Okay, so TNR, there's been some challenges lately and things that surprised me. So locally, Sugar Land has asserted, TNR is not actually provided for in our ordinance, which means you can't do it. And so now they're trying to decide, do we want to do one? They're asking people to engage in a pilot program. But so Sugar Land is taking the position of, no, you cannot do it. There is no official program, so you can't do it here unless you're part of this pilot program. So that's something to keep in mind. Helene is just crazy. There is a proposal from their city council to limit community cat colonies to 6 cats. Now, I don't think cats can count.
Right.
So, but I have have no idea how they're gonna do that. Biologically, I just don't think that's how cat colonies work. I think that they go to the carrying capacity of the land, you know, and they don't grow above that.
Well,
So-
I mean, hopefully if you catch a cat or two cats before they're able to have several.
Well,
litters of
exactly,
cats,
yeah.
then maybe you can have a small 6-cat colony, but, right.
Yeah, so there's huge opposition to that right
Arbitrary
now, so
number.
there are people who are going to city council saying, yeah, you're insane. At the state level, there was kind of a hubbub this year, or late last year, when the city of Pearland started talking about an ordinance. The Brazoria County district attorney said, well, wait a second, is that abandonment? Would TNR folks be abandoning it in violation of the cruelty statute? And so this is what they're looking at. The next page is the Texas Penal Code. These are the provisions. There's abandoning an animal in the person's custody without making arrangements for assumption of custody by someone else. Animal includes feral cats. Custody includes responsibility for the health, safety, and welfare. So the argument that Brazoria County was making was that, well, a person who's engaging in TNR picks up a cat, that cat is now in their custody. And so when they take the cat and they take it and do whatever, and then they come back and they release it, well, now they've abandoned it because they haven't given it to another person. So it's like they've taken it, but not complied with the law. And so the next page. So the Brazoria County prosecutor sent in this letter, and there were a lot of responses from animal groups arguing it. But the conclusion that the Brazoria County came to is, yeah, we're very concerned because we think that trapping an animal and then releasing it is going to be a violation of the penal code. And so they were asking the Attorney General, tell us what the law is. And they actually never got their opinion, because what happened is immediately the representatives from Harris County and Brazoria County introduced a bill into the legislature, which is on the next page. And that was Representative Bassett and Kane. And it passed very quickly and very easily, but it defines trap, neuter, and return. But the big thing is it adds to the animal cruelty statute a defense to prosecution. So in response to the Brazoria County prosecutor's concern, it now says, well, no, that if you're prosecuted, you have a defense if you're engaging in a trap, neuter, return program. So it is no longer, or it should no longer be a concern for those who were thinking it might be, who might think it's a violation of the cruelty statute. It no longer is, and this went into immediate effect. So this is just a month old, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to just remind people how important it is to be vocal about issues like this that you care about, and to vote and to research your representatives and who you're voting for and their positions on different ordinances or laws that have to do with animals. Just make sure you can go and look at their track record, what they voted on before, but it's important to let your representatives know how you feel about things like this that are important to us as animal advocates.
And I'm just going to make a pitch for THLM, and knowing which representatives are humane or animal friendly, right? Because you want to be informed before you vote.
Sure, yeah.
And so, and
Oh,
how
the THLM pitch, sorry, was that THN will let you know.
Yes, there's a website you can go to, thln.org, and you can find, your legislators. You can find a lot of information there about different bills, and so it's very important to be in contact with them.
And if staying informed through social media is your thing,
Yeah.
they also have a Facebook and Instagram
Yes.
page. It is very informative.
Yes, it
You should
is.
follow them.
You should.
Okay.
Oh, and then just as a follow-up, there is local protection here in Harris County. They specifically say, like I said, the regulations are very good. for TNR. It specifically says you're not deemed to have abandoned the cat. So you are, it's very clear in Harris County, not so in Houston where it doesn't say anything at all. But now we know by statute, it doesn't matter what Houston thinks, right? Because we know it's not
Which is good to know, remember that.
Common questions I get often is there a leash law for cats? Well, yes, there is a leash law. It's both under the Houston ordinance and under the Harris County regulations. But Harris County specifically excludes cats in the TNR program. So you do not have to be, you don't have to collar and leash those cats because, again, you're not the owner of those. And Houston doesn't say anything just because they don't have anything in their regs for TNR. Do I have to bring my cat inside during extreme temperatures? So right now we're going through an unprecedented heat wave or whatever because I am miserable.
Right.
But then we also have the extremes of the freeze several years ago. And so whether you have to bring your cat inside is less clear than whether you have to bring your dog inside. And so Texas has so many things that are specific to dogs, but there's the Safe Outdoor Dog Act, which limits, it requires certain things about if a dog's outside, you have to provide this shelter, if they're tied up, you have to use a cable tie-in or something like that, it can't be a chain and that kind of thing. And it doesn't, and it talks about temperatures as well. For cats, there's nothing. They're not covered by that provision. However, if you look into other things, there's a provision that says the local provision, I can't remember which one, it's gotta be Harris County, says that you have to provide shelter that's sufficient and appropriate for the requirements of the species. And so if anyone ever push that, you would then have to show, well, clearly you shouldn't have a cat out in 10-degree weather, that kind of thing. It would also be a violation of the Texas Animal Cruelty Law to fail unreasonably to provide shelter for an animal in the person's custody. And so if, and this is going to come up if you're living next to a person who isn't caring for their animals. And so if that happens, that is cruelty, and you can submit a
report.
Yeah, a report, that's the word. Yeah, you can do an online report and let them know, and you can do it anonymously.
And I do want to point out that for those of us who do care for a cat colony, obviously it's impossible to round them all up and bring them inside during extreme temperatures.
Yeah.
But what we can do is provide some relief, like shelter, ice water, food in shaded areas, just try to do what we can. We all know cats are survivors, but still with this unprecedented heat, well, I don't know if it's unprecedented here in Houston, but cats, they can survive the extreme temperatures, I think, but there could be cats that do experience heat stroke like dogs do if you take them out to walk in the heat of the day. So it's important to keep that in mind if you're feeding a community of cats. But typically cats, they're smart and they will hide and sleep the hot day away and only come out for food once the sun is no longer a threat. But yeah, it is good to provide those cats, even though they are not personally owned cats, with some relief from extreme temperatures.
We talked about microchipping. Do you have to? Yes, if you live in Houston, you do have to. You do have to chip. Like I said, it says no person shall own, possess, or have control. So that becomes a question with regards to the community cats. But again, the frequently asked questions on the BARC website clearly is showing that it's meant to apply to owned animals. So that would be your argument if it came to push comes to shove kind of thing.
No, that's good information to have. Because we are running tight on time, I want to go ahead and start with the decline.
Okay, what is declawing? It's the removal of the first knuckle of each toe. So we have a little diagram here. Should I do it to my cat? There's definitely long-lasting pain. It's a lack of their defenses if they get outside. They wouldn't be able to run up a tree if they're being chased by a dog or protect themselves. Can I do it to my cat? It actually depends where you live. There's some laws that ban it in certain states, and here, Austin bans it, I believe, but Houston has not banned it. Also, it's declawing them is doing that. There's our hand, so it would be like cutting these first knuckles off of our hands. Would you be able to naturally function every day if someone did that to you? Also, cats have scent. That's how they leave their scent. They stretch. So while people who declaw a cat think they're saving their furniture, they're causing other problems for the cat. Obviously, the pain, lack of defenses, but there can also be behavioral problems that come up, and one of those could be not using their litter box. There's a lot of different things, and even though a cat has been declawed, they still have that natural instinct to scratch. So it's not a good idea. A veterinarian can help you if you don't know how to teach them to use a scratching pole or even the cardboard box, but they'll use it. I don't have any scratch furniture, so.
And just, yeah, to point out, it is an amputation.
Yeah.
It is just, it's not humane.
It's
And,
inhumane.
cats that have been declawed before this was a hot topic issue, they tend to develop arthritis early in their paws and in their legs. So that's something else to keep in mind. And then as far as behavioral like stuff like scratching the furniture, provide them with other options, something more enticing to scratch, like a scratching post. But let's be real here. We know that doesn't always work, providing another option or a better option. And so I recommend covering your couch, or if this is something that's an issue for you, even though I hate to say it, then maybe a cat is not the pet that you want to adopt. Maybe you should get a dog.
Oh, you want to do it? Okay, so declawing is actually becoming a big issue. New York in 2019 passed the first anti-declawing ban, and it's good because it says it prohibits any person from declawing unless it's for therapeutic purposes. So this means no vet can do it and no owner can do it, because an owner can do a lot of things to their animals under cruelty statutes that other people couldn't do, right? Maryland, though, they just passed theirs last year, and they phrase theirs differently. That prohibits veterinarians from declawing unless necessary for therapeutic purposes. So if an owner were to do it somehow, and I'm just having horrible visions of how they would do it, that's not a violation of the declawing ban. So I wish Maryland had gone the New York route. A lot of cities are also jumping on the bandwagon. So that's a lot of order there. But 8 cities in California, West Hollywood was the first one, and then they started adding up. Pennsylvania, we have a couple, Wisconsin, Denver, Los Angeles. Austin also has a declawing ban, which is now causing problems. But even in other countries, there's declawing bans. And those countries are also against other things like tail docking and ear clipping, trimming, tipping.
Like Dobermans getting their ears.
Yeah, like Dobermans, yeah.
shaped.
And so we're kind of a little backwards here in the US, like I've always thought, when it comes to animal laws. So this is the Austin ordinance, and it's interesting because it says any person, you can't perform this procedure unless it is therapeutic. There we go, subsection C. And in response to this, and when you read the committee report on this bill, it is specifically aimed at the Austin ordinance. And so Representative Lynn Steffi is this veterinarian of 40 years practice, his website says. And so he introduced a bill this session saying that essentially what it's doing is it's saying no local ordinance or regulation can say that a veterinarian can't do something that's not prohibited by the Licensing Act. So basically he's saying, I don't want cities and towns and counties to interfere with what veterinarians can do. Veterinarians know better, apparently, than what the populace does, is what this argument is. And just limiting the authority of these ordinances. It did get through the House, But it's, I died in, committee in the Senate. So I think that's something we need to watch out for, because this doesn't just relate, even though it was specifically done because of the Austin ordinance, the way it's written is pretty expansive. And so this could have a bigger impact than deploying cats. And it's a limitation on local power. And, you know, city councils like to be able to go with, to regulate what's going on in accordance with what their population wants.
Right.
And I say that with a smile, because we know city councils don't always do what we would like them to do.
That's why it's important to participate, be vocal.
This was yours.
Oh, the Big Cat Public Safety Act, it was enacted December 20th, 2022 to end the private ownership of big cats as pets and prohibit exhibitors from allowing public contact with big cats, including cubs. It places new restrictions on the commerce, breeding, possession, and use of big cat species. And if you guys remember, it wasn't too long ago in Houston, there was a big cat that got out and it was someone's pet. And while it may have been someone's pet, it obviously caused a public safety to anyone who would have gotten in the way of a big cat. And I wanted to let you know that I was going to give you all this ever since this passed. It's actually, I think it's July 18th. If you own a big cat, you have until that day to register the big cat. And if you don't register the big cat, it could be a fine of up to $20,000 and possibly jail time for every violation. So, you know, they are wild animals. They are innately wild. And there's not that many left in the wild. There's probably 2,000 or 3,000 left. So really, we should be more focused on conservation and having a cat like this as a pet, because your little cat is known as a mini tiger anyway, if you talk to your vet. So.
If you have a black cat, we like to call them our mini house panther.
Yes.
So there's that too. But yeah, ultimately, just don't
Don't
get
get it, yeah.
a big cat, don't own a tiger or a lion. That's just in itself, it seems inhumane.
It's, yeah, it's
to
right,
avoid them.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so solutions beyond trap, neuter, return. We've mentioned many of these already, but be informed, an informed and proactive pet owner. So when you think about the TNR problem or the pet overpopulation problem in Houston, really, when you think about it, it's our fault as humans. We've failed our own pets or the animals, our domesticated animals, the animals around us to some extent by not taking them to be vaccinated and fixed. As an example, a couple of years ago, I had a neighbor move in down the street, and she rescued 4 cats from a cat colony, and she decided that, you know, she was going to socialize them. They were her cats. And then she moved from one part of the neighborhood, a few houses down from where I live, and I started seeing these new cats come around, and I was like, wow, where did they come from? I have not identified these. I haven't seen these cats before. None of them had their ear tips, and none of them were fixed. So I started trapping these cats, these new cats, and I got them fixed. And then there was a couple of those cats that I thought, wow, they are super friendly. They could be socialized and possibly adopted out. They don't have a microchip, of course, because I ended up getting them fixed, but I started to put bell collars on these cats. And I think the neighbor saw me outside with the cats being friendly, and she came and talked to me. She said, oh my God, these are my cats. We just moved here. And I said, I'm going to be TNRing the offspring of your cats for the next 10 years. But basically, really, we're close friends now, and I educated her about TNR and the issues with it. And she's now helping me in the neighborhood identify cats that need to be fixed. And she's, you know, saying, hey, a new person moved in down the street, maybe we should talk to them. So it was a good opportunity to be able to raise awareness and educate someone else and get them on the TNR bandwagon. And then obviously, adopt, don't shop. There are new laws coming out against breeders in puppy mills with dogs. But we always recommend, if you want a new furry friend, please go to the kill shelters. Are there no kill shelters? Just make sure you're not buying a cat from a pet store, even from the people that sit on the side of the road saying they're selling puppies or kittens. That is that's illegal now. Yes, so you should report those people, you should snap a picture, you should report it if you see that, if it's illegal, and it's also inhumane. Those people are breeding those animals, and then most of them will not go on to have good lives, or they'll end up being euthanized. And then reach out to local rescue organizations or people like me that you may know that can help if you have a cat hotspot in your neighborhood that needs tending to, or you need help with resources to get it fixed, those cats fixed and vaccinated. But also, we just want to say before we move on to Q&A, like the quote from Maya Angelou, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Really, that's that was our intent with this panel as well, to let people, to raise awareness and to educate people about TNR and humane solutions for addressing the pet overpopulation problem in Houston. So now you all know better. So you have to help spread the word, okay? And you can send people our way. I'm okay if you hand out my email address. I'm sure Brian and Mira are okay with that as well, but use discretion. So, but yeah, so we will just briefly go through here. We have all of our resources for reporting animal cruelty, both anonymously and then with the Harris County Animal Cruelty Task Force. It is not anonymous. And then we have listed all of our resources here. I think, these are all the local resources, but we do include the national resources as well. Okay.
I am quite impressed that we were able to get through all the rights.
I don't see any comments online currently, but I have a nuanced two-part question. I don't know if I missed it in your guys' presentation. Do you know the actual definition of like what's considered to be inhumane?
There's no real, the statutes don't use the word inhumane.
Right.
I mean, they're in some spots. I mean, I can tell you about a New Jersey case where they were, the statute said they had to do humane regulations. And the court was like, well, what the heck does humane mean? I don't know what this means. And so they went, it was a farm case, and it went through all of these different, the gestation crates for pigs and that kind of thing. And things that I think were inhumane, the court was like, well, that's okay. So it's not a specific term, and it's not anything that's defined anywhere that I know of in our statutes.
So I was just gonna say, the purpose of my question, and I don't want to seem like I'm part of this at all, but like the vision or how I see this issue is as a government instructor. And so the way that we talk about laws that are being created is essentially, it's always a balance between personal freedom and a need for order and security. And so when I'm thinking like, I guess my point is like, I had trouble originally understanding the difference between an animal rights advocate and an animal welfare advocate. And basically the way that I break it down is like, if you're approaching it from an animal rights perspective, you're saying that subjectively the animal should have similar rights to a human being. Okay, I'm wrong on that. The next piece I was gonna say is if we're talking about welfare, essentially what we're talking about is negligence and abuse at like the most basic level, but like all three become referencing like humane. And so like, since that's a very subjective term, I just don't know how we determine what exactly is considered negligence, abuse in the law.
I'll give you an example of that. So things that we would consider inhumane are what are listed in the anti-cruelty statute, right? So society has made a decision there that will tolerate certain things, like there are so many exceptions, right? There's exceptions for wildlife, and there's exceptions for exceptions for hunters, and all of these different exceptions where society has set society through our legislature has said, well, we'll put up with this, but this goes past the line. We're not going to deal with this. And I did want to talk about the animal rights thing. So even though we think of it, or a lot of people will think of it as an animal having the rights of a human, that's incorrect, right? Your cats are not going to vote, right? This is not a question of, do they get to go to school, that kind of thing. And even now, they have limited rights. They have a right not to be treated cruelly, right? They have they're not supposed to be tortured. They're not supposed to be abandoned and that kind of thing. So it's it's a limited role of what rights there would be. And then, of course, society has to decide how much are we going to do, right? So having TNR programs to make it more a better life for those cat colonies, you know, would be an example. It's not necessarily an individual right, more just a kind of a general right that we're looking at. But I just wanted to make that distinction that it's not our rights, right? There's no constitutional protection of animals at all. So it's what we're willing to do and what we should do morally, kind of thing.
I don't disagree, I have one
Yeah,
more follow-up with the big cat laws. Like you said, we just shouldn't do it, like it's not right to do it, and it's not really safe if they get out, that poses a threat. Like that's very appealing to me from the way that I see the law of like, obviously this is the community threat, so you sacrifice your right as a person to own whatever you like because it's now become a community threat, and so we need to put that like on a higher pedestal than the right to own it. Would that be kind of the correct interpretation, or do you have more that you would say on the big cats issue?
Me personally, you're taking a tiger out of the wild that hasn't been domesticated, like dogs and cats have been domesticated for thousands of years. This is mine. So when your big giant, I don't know how much they weigh, 500-600 pounds, gets out accidentally, like, and it's, you know, that's threatening a community. They're a wild animal of that size running through a neighborhood. And while you have been feeding it with a baby bottle and rubbing its belly, as I saw in the video, it's encountering new people that this tiger doesn't know. I mean, it's a public safety act,
But I have to say,
public safety problem.
it also, I think what she's bringing up too is, I don't consider it my right or anybody's right to own a tiger.
Right, yeah.
I mean, there are different ways to I guess, view that and debate that, but going back to the statement about what is inhumane, the basic definition is, you know, without compassion for misery or suffering. And the way we interpret that is without not turning a blind eye to the misery and suffering that we see around us, particularly with cats for this discussion. So when we are saying inhumane, that's what we're thinking about. People who would, you know, cause misery or suffering to a cat or to animals, who would knowingly do that, and people who turn a blind eye to that. And really that comes down to, I think we were talking in discussions about just being a good citizen. And I think it's part of this, you know, your civic duty to address issues like that around you, not turn a blind eye to it.
And it's also your civic duty not to put other people in danger, right? So my saying on my thing is never turn a blind eye to an animal in need. And in my, I see that tiger, in that's my opinion, that you've put it in a cruel situation when you've taken it out of, it's not a domesticated pet, you're forcing that in the way I think, that is inhumane. That tiger should have had the right, its own, to live in the wild. So it is my civic duty to, you know, want other people to be safe, right? So I do think that a 500, 600, 700 pound tiger that got out of someone's house is not helping protect our community or what I stand for. It's just unsafe, and it is cruel to a wild animal that shouldn't be in captivity. It hasn't been domesticated for thousands of years, from back to the times of Egyptians, is where cats, you know, we know there's thousands of years that they've come to where they are, right? And, you know, these feral cats, there's been several, you know, I've TNR'd a lot, but there have been about 7 or so that aren't so feral, because some of them aren't actually feral and they have landed into homes. So we have to remember, cats, they're survivors, but they can also, you know, some of these little guys may not do well as ferals and may be best off when they're socialized in a home. They'll be safer.
So that is something we think about too. We want to make sure we are not causing any public health or threats, threats or issues with the community. So obviously getting these cats vaccinated against rabies is something that everyone should want and be on board with. That's part of what TNR is, our TNVR, if you see that variation of it. But when I think when you were talking about, I think when we're talking about inhumane treatment, Fran, I think, aren't there the laws, like if you see something happening or you witness something, I guess maybe versions of the bystander law, like, are there?
Well, okay, now, are you talking about a negligence standard if somebody
Or
is bitten?
Or,
Like the one bite rule is what people like to call it.
well, those are incredibly difficult to talk about that with the dog cases with that, but, well, I guess going back to if you see an animal being neglected, if you live with neighbors, you notice their dog is outside in extreme heat, it has matted fur, it's not being fed, it's not being fed with water or shade, that's something that we would consider inhumane if you did not report that, or if you did not try to address that issue.
But from a legal perspective, there's no obligation for you to do that. You may have a moral obligation, but you definitely don't have a legal obligation.
Okay.
And I did want to talk about just the idea of the big cat thing. We've been regulating for public safety forever, you know, at the local level with bans on exotic animals. That's also for the public safety. And I use an example in class. Rudy Giuliani in New York banned ferrets as like a dangerous species or something, and they did some hysterical commercials about, you know, ferrets with, you know, saws or whatever. I don't know, it's really funny. But yeah, so it's all about public safety.
You know, I worked in radio TV and I left. I was a volunteer at the Houston SPCA media volunteer, and I worked there for about 6 years where I was the media person. I went to a lot of animal cruelty rescues. I knew a lot about animals, but some of the horrific things that I would see of how people treated animals just to make money from them. But the exotic animals, it wasn't just like a tiger. It was a tiger. It was bears. It was giant snakes, and how horribly these animals were treated. And these people were just there to make money off of them. I actually had the opportunity to travel to Romania for this last remaining bear, and we took her to the best bear sanctuary there. She actually passed away. She lived there for 12 years. Her name was Betsy. But Betsy, since when she was a baby, all she knew was abuse because she was put in working as entertainment. That's not what these animals are supposed to be living as. That is cruel. She lived in a cage where she was this giant bear, but in order that she couldn't stand in the cage, they had to spray water. He would give them a little water by spraying a hose. That's cruel, you know, in the Texas heat. So when she talks about they've been working on the large animal, you know, the exotic animals, isn't it very easy to get a license to own these, or it used to be to get to own these? And really, they're not animals that need to be owned by people, right?
Yeah, Texas is, we're backwards for so many things, but in Texas, we have the most canned hunts in the US, right? So it's easy to get big, you know, animals that shouldn't be had. Like, you want to shoot a lion? Yeah, you can find somewhere in Texas where you can do it, you know, but yeah, that's.
I do want to, go back to your inhumane comment. So I don't want people to consider that with difference in standard of living or how you treat and care for your animal. Like, there may be someone who thinks taking your cat to the cat masseuse and getting your cat manicure every month, that is inhumane. How can you not provide that for your cat? Especially if your cat is like, you know, your child. There's that's not what we're talking about at all when we say that. So there are different standards of care, which we understand. I often say, oh my gosh, how could they do this with their cat or with their dog? But then I step back and I'm like, okay, is this just a standard of care issue? Is the dog or the cat really suffering or in any harm or danger? And, you know, to process it that way. So I think it was important to make that distinction.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all making that distinction, because that's where I was trying to figure out the difference between the subjective perspective of the morality and like what's actually normal.
Yeah.
We do have an online question. What are some examples of cat deterring fragrances? Where are they available? And can you list it in the chat? I can type it in the chat.
So natural ones are just the peel of an orange or the peel of the lemon, the citrus scent they don't like. They also don't like wet coffee grounds, so that's something that shouldn't cost you too much if you drink coffee. And I don't know if you maybe go to a local Starbucks, they may give you some, I don't know, you'd have to ask, but that would work as well. And then if you go to your local Tractor Supply store, they'll definitely have those, is it the scat mat for cats, and it's non-chemical, but those are, you want to always do things that are non-toxic, as we mentioned earlier, and isn't going to harm them, it's just going to deter them. And they also have those motion activated sprinklers you can get as well. Again, at a Tractor Supply store, we probably have those.
I also saw them on Amazon.
And Amazon has, all these little deals.
I want to mention lemon pills, that kind of thing, that's probably the best option because you don't think about your cats eating coffee grounds. But white vinegar, the smell of that is a good deterrent as well. But I just want to also say that there are a lot of cat products on the market for sprays. They're marketed with essential oils in them, and you have to be really careful with that. Essential oils are toxic and deadly to cats. But when these products that you buy maybe online, like Wonderside, that say they have cedar essence in them, they're basically something that's extracted from these essential oils. So it's not the oil in its pure toxic form to cats, but just make sure you're not using like lemon oil or orange an essential oil for that deterrent.
Like the stuff you use on your furniture.
Yeah,
Right.
because essential oils, I don't believe are good for dogs or cats, that it's not a good thing. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. From a legal point of view, and I'm thinking about this as the other end of that is people who have too many cats. Does the law legally define, like in our neighborhood, we think, I haven't investigated this, that our HOA says we can only have 3 pets.
They're lying.
I don't, that's kind of, yeah, I haven't looked it up myself, so I don't know if that's actually in the rules or not. But is there a legal limit to how many you can have? And does this apply to that? That seems to be somewhat of a gray line between I'm taking care of these cats, but I'm not.
So I do want to say first, we debated on whether or not to address this in our presentation, and we decided we wouldn't, and we would wait to see if we had a question about it. So Fran, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, ordinances do in Harris County and Houston are basically the same. So it's 4 adult dogs or 4 adult cats or 3 and 3. And then there's like exceptions if you have kittens or something like that before they become adults. But there's actually 2 levels to your question, because if your HOA is telling that, you have to look at the covenants for your house, because they may have something in there that says limited to a certain number of animals. They may say it's only 3 animals, and you have to do that not because it's the law, but because you agreed to do it. And they, if you're in a community that's really big with their HOA. So I live in one that doesn't have an HOA, so I'm really lucky, but some of them get really stringent. They're like, these are the types of animals you can have, you can't have more than this. They just try to, you can't have chickens in your backyard, you can't do that, this, that, and the other. And so it's really tough when you're in these really nice neighborhoods. They're just trying to protect their home value. So yeah, you should check yours to see whether they're lying.
And I just want to ask you, because this was a question that came up where I live, don't local laws supersede those HOA rules?
Only if there's a conflict.
Only if there's a conflict.
So there's rarely a conflict between ordinances and HOAs. So as long as they're more stringent than the ordinance, they can do it. If they say you can have 7 cats, you still have to comply with the ordinance.
Okay.
Right, so that's what they tend to do, is they just become more strict than the city or the town.
And I mean, I think many of us may know people, especially people that work in animal rescue, that may have more than what the ordinance says they allow. And really, I think if you suspect an animal hoarding situation in your neighborhood or a family member, really the best way to go about it is to contact the Houston Humane Society or the Houston SPCA to investigate that issue. In a humane way that also looks at what's going on with the person that might be in this situation, but also the quality of care. Say you have a neighbor who has 30 cats inside the house, but like there's a lot of square footage. The cats are all living in clean, good conditions. They all have an area, you know, it's like, I think of those things, like would I want to throw that person under the bus for something like that? But obviously with most animal breeding situations, the cats or the animals, even it doesn't have to just be cats, they're living in inhumane conditions.
I was actually, I don't know if you guys remember this a few years ago, the women who had over 100 cats in their home. Do y'all remember that one? Usually I go inside of the house and take pictures. And I was like, I'm gonna stay outside. And because the investigators had to wear hazmat suits. It was that bad. And there was 100 cats rescued, some were feral. Now, I believe just, you know, I wanna say they started with good intentions, but they probably weren't fixing the cats. And they had come up with a system, the cats of their feces made tunnels. So these are not the kind of situations you want to live in. And if you see it, obviously there's an ammonia smell.
It's a public health,
It's a health
issue.
Yeah, it's a public health, and you want to call in. There's anonymous places to report it, and there's some that are not. But when I worked in these cases, there was a woman who reported her dad anonymously, and she had to. So he doesn't know who reported him, but it's also, you know, animal cruelty is so inhumane.
It is animal cruelty, but I do want to point out it's a disease.
Right, yeah.
So wording is in the, what is it, DSM-4 or whatever?
Yeah,
right.
And
So I
you
mean,
can prosecute, but it doesn't help, which the possession ban is the.
The
only
possession
thing.
ban just, yeah, it's what it's gonna do, and I'm so glad to see this, because the possession ban is if you know, have them in a cruel situation, you can't get animals for a certain amount of time. And there was a situation where there was a man who had, when I worked years ago, he had mini horses and they had to be, you know, taken away. But then sure enough, you start to get more mini horses. And the same thing happened. So you kind of have to watch it, because I was so new to understanding that. And then I really, when it was explained to me, it's a hoarding thing. So you could be hoarding water bottles, you know, but these people are hoarding animals. So, you know.
yeah, I mean, I think it's important to assess the situation and the conditions and the person.
Yeah.
But obviously, if they're living in inhumane conditions, then I think it's your duty, your responsibility to report that. Again, I recommend going through the Houston SPCA or the Houston Humane Society.
All right.
I have another question. If you're engaged in TNR and you accidentally capture a neighbor's cat, who is their cat, their owner, they take care of it, they don't want it to be a neighbor. And there's nothing you know that you think it's a neighborhood cat, and it's just their outdoor cat. Is there a legal problem if I capture that cat, take it in, get it fixed, and the neighbor says, you fixed my cat, I didn't want my cat to be fixed? I understand there's a neighbor thing, there's a cultural community kind of thing.
Yeah,
Legal.
I can totally see this happening. So, and I believe it's under the Harris County regulations. I think there's a provision that defines stray as any cat that has no tags or something. So that would include owned cats, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't get a personal lawsuit. The likelihood of them ever suing though is really small, because what are their damages? Now if it were a show cat, that's something completely different. But if they had a show cat, what's it doing outside? Right? And so the likelihood that they could ever find a lawyer, unless they have a lot of money and want to waste it, because they wouldn't get very much back. And the big concern though is just neighbor to neighbor, having to live next to this person who's mad at you for the next 10 years.
So I know we're out of time, but I do just want to add that if you're going through TNR programs, like these big trapping events that I do every month that are sponsored through Houston Pet Set and Team Feral Houston, if and all TNR programs will do this. If you bring in a cat and it's microchipped and that cat is not fixed, they are going to fix that cat. If it's microchipped and it says it belongs to this person, they're not putting that cat back out there unfixed. And so
Microchip or something.
even if it's microchipped. And so the general, and I think there is something that supports that if there's a cat out there and it's unfixed, that can be not interpreted as neglect, but I think the law would support you for, hey, I saw this cat, it wasn't fixed, you know, it's creating a nuisance here in our neighborhood. And I can't imagine that any criminal charges pressed against someone for fixing an owned cat, their neighbor's cat would, not
Yeah.
but I would hate to see something like that happen.
Yeah,
but
it would
we do
have to
fix
be-
owned cats, yeah.
Yeah, there's no criminal law that says you can't pick up a cat that doesn't have a tag and go get it.
But if it has a tag, that's.
That would change things, because now you know that it's an owned animal.
So,
And so, yeah. you have to
well,
be
that's what I'm
very
saying with the
careful
microchip, even for these TNR events, they will
There's-
still fix the
Oh,
cat.
absolutely.
And I do want to say I've approached neighbors that they have their cats with collars tags and they're usually males, unneutered males. They're not fixed. I go and I find where that cat lives. I talk to the neighbors. I let them know, hey, I can put you, I can help you find low cost resources, or actually I can get this done for free. Talk to them about it. Usually they'll say, oh, for free. Okay, that's great. Yeah, go ahead and do it. So I haven't encountered anyone yet that's like, absolutely not, you can't fix my cat. I think more likely we get the excuse that my cat is indoor only, we don't have to get it fixed. And there's a ton of health reasons why you should get it fixed to prolong the cat's life, but also for the quality of life. But again, that cat is going to get out no matter what and reproduce. But anyway.
Great. Well, thank you to our speakers for this informative discussion on cats and the law. The library will be hosting an adoptable cat cafe this Saturday, June 24th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in library room LRNC 131. So for more information, please email Regina Vitolo. Please visit cflib.info/event for more information on our upcoming library events. Please sign up for the library newsletter at cyflib.info/library and follow the library on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay up to date on library events. Thank you all.
Yeah, have a fun library. You know, bringing faces up there. Thanks for the questions. We appreciate it.
Thank you for helping us with those cats that are in our neighborhood.
Yeah, and I was telling your mom that like, if you need more traps, you need to borrow more traps, you help with any of that stuff, feel free to reach out. But yeah.